Welcome back to the Burnoutbobby YouTube video. In today's video, the stuff is back from powder. I got the front frame, the rear frame. You can kind of see behind me, but the lights are kind of blocking it out. I have the front frame cover guard. So really, this is an exciting time because as you saw in the last video, I put the motor together, did a bunch of little things with the motor. Now, it's time to get it all together. So, like I said, I'm going to record part for part for the most part with this series and go over it, each part. It's going to be kind of strung out, longer videos I guess I'll do. I don't want to do multiple videos, I'll just do a longer video. So right now what you're going to run into, or what we're going to run into is when you go and get your front rear frame repowder coated after you grind down the rear frame. You tend to run into a couple of things and we're going to go over that next. Rear frame back. Super nice white. They did a great job with it. It actually, the white that they did paint matches almost identically. It's just a little bit off from the factory battery box, which is really hard to do. The one thing that I did notice is they went super heavy with this. So others may not be able to notice it, but in certain areas you can see like a little bit of a drippage or a little bit of like waviness, and that's almost like a fisheye, or they just sprayed super heavy with the powder. It's not going to be noticeable to the naked eye or somebody that just walks by and looks at the bike like, oh man, this is sweet. Me personally, just being who I am and that I deal with this on a daily basis, this is things I notice. So like today what I'm going to do is I'm going to shave down the face of these here for the ignition to sit flush, because you want this to go perfectly in. Then you can put the nuts in and everything. Grind down the top of the triple tree tube here so that the cup can fit right in. They sprayed they also sprayed inside the tube pretty heavy here. So I am going to have to grind with my Dremel or yeah, probably my Dremel, get in there and open all this up here, because you do have that lower cup that presses in there that holds the bearings and the lower race. So in order for all that to fit, that's what I'm going to have to do. So these are a couple things you will run into. The other thing that I always like to do personally is after powder can get into the threads for the seat frame bolts, for the main frame bolts. So what you can do is you can get yourself a tap and die kit from Harbor Freight or Amazon, whatever you want to do. And these ones right here, the frame bolts, if you're ever trying to clean these out from powder beforehand, are M10 by 1.25. These bolts right here for the seat frame, if you ever want to clear these out, are M8 by 1.25. And then the shock bolt right here is another M10 by 1.25. Definitely would recommend it if you get your stuff repowder coated, and if they did like this one, even if you do tape off in the holes here like they did, it can still seep in through the back. Like I said, they went super heavy with it, so I already went ahead and cleaned those out in advance so that I can at least get the frame together like this for the first video. What you're going to see next is just a time lapse of me grinding away here, top here, and then underneath the tube here, and then test fitting the cups, and then putting the sliding the triple tree in. So you can see I ground down the 3 points there for the ignition. That's good. Next I did the top here, and I was able to slide in. Well, you gotta give it a little gentle tap with a hammer, but I just tapped around the edges here and got that to go in. Same thing with the bottom one here. I was able to tap this, and now that's sitting flush in there. So we're good on that end. I'm gonna go ahead and put the triple tree in, start getting that tightened up. Stop the time lapse real quick just to go over something. This bottom nut right here, the larger one, this one basically helps pinch the bottom of the triple tree up into the tube here, and you'll have the bearings under here, and this kind of acts as a cup. If you look, it's recessed underneath, so it keeps the bearings in there and sealed. If you make this too tight, you are not going to be able to move your triple tree freely. If you make it too loose, then you'll have room where the bearings can bounce around and the triple tree will not be sturdy in there. So you have to play around with it, loosen this up, tighten it up until you find yourself a nice movement. So I'm not moving it too much. I'm not using too much force to make it move. So that's what I want. You don't hear the bearings grinding or anything like that from being too tight. And you can see I could just push it back and forth like that. So that's perfect. So now what you do is you slide that little sheath in afterwards, and then you can go ahead and tighten this top nut. And you can make this top nut tight because all this does is pinches in between and keeps this secure where it is, so it's not going to back out at all. Stopping the time lapse again. You're going to be seeing a lot of this. So the reason why is, as you know, when you take off your factory ignition, it has a specialty Honda bolt. You can either get the special screw that they have for it, or if you'd be like me, you just take a Dremel, you put a slit in the face of it there, and then use a flathead, take them out. You can use those bolts again. I don't. I believe these are M6 by 20s, and you can keep the same nuts as you can see inside there. They drop right in, little red Loctite, and then now these are Allen head if you ever want to take them off again. So that is what we do with the factory ignition. Next up, I'm going to be putting on the battery cage, little things like that, the factory parts that came off. Pretty sure you guys don't need any introduction or any instructions, I guess you could say, on that. So I'm going to skip that, keep time-lapsing it. Let's roll. Alright, sorry if the camera drops, apologize. I literally just broke my tripod, so this is going to be fun to do this the rest of the series. So next up, I'm installing the Trs Block Off Plate with push button. So real easy install. Just remove the factory gas and high beam light. Just a little 2 Phillips heads. There's no backing nuts or anything like that. Next, take the push button plate and you just go ahead and put the Phillips head screws back in. And just like that, your TRS push button block off plate is installed. It's got the 2 wires coming down. I will be cutting these down. I'm going to leave this just zip tied up like that because I'm not going to get to that till the harness is on. Next up, I'm just going to put the front forks in. Should be pretty easy to install. I'm just going to slide them up and in. Just going to go over quick. I've done it in a video for the Ruckus before, but with these forks, no matter which ones you get, RGS, Adelin, NCY, I don't know, anything off the boat, there is a little groove at the top of the fork here. When you slide the fork up the tube, this top bolt on the triple tree will actually ride through the groove of that fork. So once that starts threading in, that fork will not go anywhere. So that's the nice part about that bolt. So that's how you know you actually got it secured in place. And again, always use some red Loctite. Which is strange because I bought some, I came home, and all of a sudden this one was already sitting here. I don't know where this came from. I haven't had Loctite in months. And of course, it's always when you go to buy one, something shows up. I don't have the right socket here. Alright, back to the time lapse. By the way, hope you guys are enjoying this type of This is kind of new for me, going back and forth, time lapse this, time lapse this. So let me know if you want something different. I'm up for all types of changes. I'm here to help. So. As y'all see, I have the Trs clip-on bars on with the Tech mount because there will be a vapor on there. With these, it's cool because you can run them a couple different ways. You can turn this around so that the bar faces down more. This one's kind of facing a little bit more level. I think it's going to be a little bit more comfortable ride for the owner. So if anything, I can always change it down the road. I have that buttoned up right now. One thing I will go over is these grips. So these are the Moxie grips from the Ruckus. You can get them in black, silver, or red. At the end, there's a little Allen key. That will take off this nub. The thing is, on the inside of here, I don't know if I can focus in there. You can kind of see it just a little bit. There's actually a little nut on the inside there. So you have to get an extension with a socket, and I believe it's an 8mm nut. And what you're going to do is loosen it up from this. This is what's going to allow you to run a mirror on both sides. So you can remove this, put a mirror on the inside, and you still have that silver finish. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove those now and then get back to the assembly of the scooter. It's now the moment I've been waiting for with the GY6 swap. We're going to go ahead and put the mount on. So I'm already predicting that this portion right here is going to be fun for me. And the reason why I'm saying that is the powder coat went pretty heavy with the powder, and I'm thinking that I might have to grind the inside of here for the shock arm, the teardrop. And then I may have to either grind in here or on the inside of the shock arm. That's gonna be one thing. The clamp I'm not worried about because it doesn't have to sit flush. If it did, then it would just spin around. So you want to use the powder as a pinch point, that's okay. The holes that are pre-drilled, that should be fine as well. We're gonna go ahead and start putting that on piece by piece. So what I'm gonna do first is take the 2M 10x20s. Put them through this faceplate. Run them through the holes here. This one the powder's a little thick on, which is something you may encounter. So I'm just gonna run it through there. Perfect. T-bracket down underneath. Line it up with the bolts. And then a washer and the M10 nylock. So we have that on there, it's loose. The big confusion a lot of people reach out to me about is like, oh, you're supposed to have a spacer for the bottom here. You're not. The 49cc's got a spacer. The GY6's, it's not required at all. So the next step is you're gonna take your mount. I polished mine so you can see there it's got like a mirror finish. This is gonna line up right here. So where you see this little C-clamp, it's gonna go on the inside of the shock tab right here. I'll raise up the camera just a little bit. So this shock tab right here is where this is gonna go on the inside. Now a little tip also is, if you're worried about scratching the powder or paint that you have right here, I put Vaseline on here, so that when you're moving it back and forth, the mount and getting the fitment right, it doesn't tear up your powder as bad. So that's one thing I've learned to try. It worked out pretty well for me, so little tip. So I'm just going to, again, put these just very loose, no Loctite just yet. I did this with the Nardo build series as well. So just super, super loose right now. because this mount is not going to sit up and down perfectly straight. It's actually going to go at a rake like this at an angle. 4 bolts, I'm just going to put them on loosely. So now I have the Trs shock arm mirror finish with my Amazon polishing kit. Boy! Literally, because all the stuff that from the Ruckus here is all 6061 build aluminum. All you have to do is, I think I spent 40, maybe 40 bucks on between the polish and then polishing pads. And that's how it comes out. So if you're looking for something like that on your build just to clean it up, it's the way to do it. So next thing what you do is you're going to slide this underneath here. It's going to line up next to that standard bolt little C-clamp that we had on the frame here. This part will go next to it. So I'm going to turn that line up next to it. And just as I thought, the powder in between these 2 tabs on the factory frame is too thick, so I cannot get this to slide up. These are things that happen. I was well prepared for this, so I'm going to go ahead and take off some on the inside of here, and then the inside of here as well, and then we'll get back and try to Dremel it out. You can see I ground away the powder on the inside there, on both sides. So with that, you can slide this piece through, and turn it a little bit sideways, and then boom, line it up. I'm going to put the bolt through that's provided with the Theruckshop, and then start to tighten this up just a little bit. Okay, so now that we have the shock arm on, we can go ahead and tighten up all the bolts for that. So I will tighten up the shock arm because that is stationary. The mount does move back and forth so it swings, but the shock arm does stay still. So this I will be putting Loctite on and fastening up. So luckily, it wasn't too bad. The real trick is this little, I call it the teardrop piece up top here. The trick is loosening that up first, and then you get it all fitted correctly, and then you can tighten up the teardrop after. And that seems to have helped me a lot with when the rear frame has been re-powder coated. Typically the factory powder coat sometimes can be kind of thick, but definitely after you send it away to a place, majority of the time they lay it on pretty heavy. And then after that, we're going to drag this motor on over, line up the motor, and bolt that on. It's pretty exciting. See the bike coming together a little more and more. I think it's probably the most fun about these GY6 swaps is you take it all apart, you powder coat it, you put the time into it, and then when you start seeing like your imagination and what you thought this was going to be come to life, it's to me that's super rewarding. I'm pretty happy about that. This very well could possibly be one of the longest videos in Burnoutbobby video history. So you're gonna line up the bottom of the motor mount here in between the motor. There's 2 motor tabs, mounting tabs. Now you're gonna notice a space on this right side, the side that has that cut that goes down. There's a spacer that's included in the kit, and it's on the bolt. This spacer is what goes in between there. Usually I like to go with the Allen head side through on the left side of the bike here, through the motor bushing first into the motor mount. There we go. Slide that spacer in on the inside here before the can notice, but I keep looking over here because I just want to make sure that this valve cover doesn't hit. If you're cautious, you can take some blue painter's tape and line the inside of your frame. I did that with the Nardo build as well. Nylock on, we're going to put this mount. This is our stainless steel stretch bar. You're going to want this pointed tab facing up under the frame here where that T-bracket is. So I'm going to slide this underneath. So now we got the stretch bar. You can see I'm pretty far off. So this is what I'm saying, when this mount isn't going to be straight up and down. Some of you have messaged me saying the mount didn't fit, but it fits. You just gotta give her a nudge. I need to make sure this goes back a little further, so I gotta loosen up the bolts on here. I kind of looks like I put them too tight. There we go. So this T-bracket underneath flips two ways. There's a 12x7 and a 12/8. I have it too far over to the left, so I have to flip this the other way. So if you ever notice that there's a little bit of a gap, that's what the reason is going to be. So now that I've flipped that T-bracket under, this lines up absolutely perfect. That is what the M10 by 30 is for. So you can take that with one of the supplied washers, run it through the bolt there, another washer, and then the nylock. I'm gonna hit it with a little red Loctite as well. And then the last step after that is gonna be mounting the shock up. And once I mount the shock up, I'm gonna go through everything and tighten it up. All right, right here I have the low boy shock. Can go right here to the motor, and then I have to crack it loose a little bit here. There we go. With the shock arm, you get 2 spacers, 2 washers, and then this M10 by 65 bolt. So what happens is you can put the M10 by 65 bolt in, kind of start it. You can get 1 washer and the top of the shock, then another spacer, or I'm sorry, spacer, I said washer. And what this does is it leaves the shock centered. Put the bolt through, washer, a little bit of Loctite. Probably wondering why I put Loctite on everything, even if it's a nylock. That is because these GY6s rattle like Harleys. So I call it cheap assurance of keeping your parts. You work hard for your money. You want these parts to stay on your bike. So here's the last bolt, the M8 by, I think it's a 40. What I'm gonna do is pull up on the back of the motor here. You can see everything kind of pitch forward. And then line it up right here. So as you can see, got a decent amount done today. I have the handlebars on, battery tray there, forks, front frame cover guard. The rear sets are on. The fatty mount, like what we just showed. Motor's belted up. The next thing that I'm gonna do is probably get the wheels set up to be put on, so I can have it sitting on the front and rear wheel and start going with that. Fortunately, like I said, my tripod broke. It's gonna be a little hard to record for the next upcoming parts. And then one of my batteries for this camera, the G7X, the battery actually melted, started leaking battery acid. So fortunately the camera was okay. I keep running the little issues, I guess you could say, with this. I hope you guys are liking this so far. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one.